When I joined Rivers, I had 2 weeks to learn 80 minutes of music, which is something that I feel everyone should maybe go through once, but it's not something I would recommend. And I did the tour and I made it through. I don't feel that I played well at all on that one. I'm not a front man. If you let me talk too much on stage, I'm going to say something stupid and piss everybody off. A band name is just a label for people to identify you. Oftentimes the best ones aren't really thought of that much. You know, it's just like, there it is.
They have over 200,000 monthly Spotify listeners. They've been featured on a number of playlists, and their upcoming self-titled album is out May 30th. Andy Thomas from Rivers of Nihil, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Hello, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into like all the music that I want to talk to that this band has done over its career, but like especially this new upcoming album. Just tell me like a bit about that and what listeners can kind of expect from it.
Well, so it's my first album with Rivers. I think to keep it short, what listeners can expect is kind of what Rivers has always done, which is an expansion of their sound with one foot in what Rivers started as, which is a very heavy band. So
Yeah.
there's very heavy stuff on it, and big hooks, big choruses, big riffs, guitar solos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is yeah, it seems to be fit like whenever I think of like self-titled albums, that's like I don't know, I feel like there's some amount of pressure to be like, okay, this is who we are. This is like the sound we have, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like they're doing that, like going back to or keeping the like original sound of the band and just kind of showcasing that in this album.
yeah. I mean, I can say that like interpersonally and stuff, the band is really doing well. We really get along together. I mean, we all grew
Hmm.
up together, kind of. Jared grew up in Reno, but Brody, and Biggs all grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania. I've known them for a long time, 15,
Yeah.
20 years. Um,
Yeah.
so, to make the album self-titled, it felt right, especially because the the four seasons, the first four albums they did, that was over. There was a bunch of lineup changes, and the lineup changes were positive. At
Hmm.
the time they weren't positive, but ultimately they led to positive things. And yeah, I think it felt right to self-title it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So with I mean, you mentioned like some of these lineup changes. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know, I think you're the newest member of the band, like officially.
Correct. Correct.
Um, how has it been? I mean, obviously you've been more around the band than in the band for these, but like with all these lineup changes, everything, what kind of keeps this band going or like keeps their sound consistent?
Well, I think fundamentally what keeps the band going is that Brody and Biggs won't quit. And I admire that. They're very this band is everything to them, and it's everything to Jared and I too now.
Yeah.
But they've just doggedly pursued this music, and I think you know that's why it's great.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so getting into more some of the like specific songs, music, everything like that, the kind of singles so far from this album, American Death and House of Light, what like made those feel right as like, okay, these should be singles for the album.
Well, okay, so the first one would be House of Light. House of Light was a song that Brody and I kind of co-wrote. So interestingly enough, when we were putting Suborbital Blues together, which is the very first single that we put out, uh, the the intro riff to House of Light was something that we were toying with for Suborbital Blues, but it didn't work out.
Got it.
And I got together and basically wrote the chorus of House of Light, and it got scrapped. And I always kind of was like, we have to use that. We have to use that. That's gonna be a big chorus. Um, the rest of the song was kind of written. Brody wrote the verse riff, and I wrote the solo section, and we kind of snowballed together. But like I said, that chorus I always knew was going to be really huge, and I really pushed for that to be on the album, and it turned out to be one of the bigger choruses on the album, and one that I'm very fond of. Although I have to sing it every night now. Um, uh, yeah, so
Yeah.
that song got chosen basically for its chorus. I think it's a really well written song. American Death was based. That was a song that Brody wrote all by himself, musically, and you know, a couple of the singles that we put out, like House of Light, and the one that we're about to put out, Water and Time, they're maybe more melodic. Or no, they're not maybe more melodic. They are more melodic, and
Yeah.
so we decided we wanted to put out kind of like a heavy banger as well, which
Yeah.
is which is what American Death is, and that's why we put it out. But I look forward to playing it live. We haven't played it live yet. We'll play it on the next tour, the U.S. headliner. So
Yeah.
that should be a
That's
fun one.
awesome.
But it definitely is like it's a burner. It makes your right hand feel like it's gonna fall off.
Yeah. And I'm sure any heavy song just gets like that much heavier playing live, with the crowd they're giving energy
Absolutely.
and everything at the same time. And so like sorry, even
Oh, you're
even in general, because I was like taking a listen back through the singles, some of the older songs, and like it's interesting to me. You guys are very much a metal band and classified as such, but you have all these different styles and the sounds and everything. And I wanted to get into specifically Where Owls Know My Name. I think it's the band's biggest song. It's at almost 6 million Spotify streams, but
yeah.
like listening to it, it's like I like the start of it doesn't sound metal, and then he gets into this whole metal chorus, metal like middle section. Looking at the visuals, it's like really psychedelic, not not as metal as I was expecting.
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys kind of combine all these styles and influences and still keep like metal at the core of it?
Well, so that song, obviously I wasn't in the band at that time. I just did a
Yeah.
guest feature on that. Um, and I remember just like showing up in the studio, and I had no clue what I was gonna do. I'd never heard it. Uh, and I thought, wow, this is great. But I think that was sort of like the sound of the band kind of coming into its own in that regard. And a lot of that music was Brody. In fact, mostly all of it was written by Brody on that
Got it.
album. I think with the exception of parts of one track or whatever, Old Nothing, I think. But yeah, that album was really I mean, that was their breakthrough, right? But it was like the first time where they they started experimenting with things other than metal. Monarchy was a pretty, death metal album. Um, and I think it just kind of came because Brody and Biggs, they listen to a lot of music. And I think I can't really speak for, why that specific song turned out the
Yeah.
way it did,
Yeah, no, it's fine.
but I can say that they definitely like, you know, Brody's always listening to music. He's one of those guys that just always has headphones on, and you know, he's listening to many different types of music.
Hmm.
Me, I'm kind of just I listen to the same stuff I listened to when I was a kid. I'm not really looking out for like new bands or whatever. Although I, do, there are new bands that I hear and go, oh, that's cool, but I kind of
You're
just
not
stick to
like seeking it out. Yeah.
not really, not really. And I talked about this in an interview yesterday too, but like I basically like since I joined Rivers, my musical consumption is largely Rivers,
Hmm.
because I walked into a band that did 4 albums without me, so it's kind of learning to speak a new language in a way, and you know there's a lot of guitaristic stuff that Brody does that I didn't really do in my past, so I had to learn, and I'm still learning how to do that well. Basically play the way he does so that we sound good live.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time doing that,
Yeah.
and he's really good, so it takes a lot of time.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. Hey heroes, sorry to interrupt that podcast episode, which I hope you are enjoying, but I wanted to tell you about my clothing line, Quest Clothing. Ever since I started really pursuing YouTube and music and all these creative things that I do, I've dreamed about starting this clothing line specifically. I had the name, I had the idea like for years before I started it, and now it's finally here. You can wear clothes like this. I have sweatshirts available, t-shirts, even clothing for like my music with cover arts and lyrics and things like that. It's all super, super cool. And right now is the best way for you guys to support me across everything I do. So be sure to check out the Quest Clothing web store with the link in the description and follow at Shop Quest Clothing on Instagram for updates about collections, discounts, things like that. Anyways, I don't want this self-sponsorship to take too long, so let's get back to the episode. That was actually great because it's kind of going right into my next question, which was just going to be like, obviously joining this band, you mentioned knowing the members, being like friends for a long time, but like actually like now becoming a member and you're like, okay, I'm officially like part of this now. Were there any adjustments that kind of had to be made either from you or from the band itself to like stay cohesive or just like, continue on the path with adding a new member?
Well, there were major adjustments. So when I joined Rivers, I had 2 weeks to learn 80 minutes of music, um, which is something that I feel everyone should maybe go through once, but it's not something I would recommend.
Yeah.
Uh, it was very very stressful, and it was for a tour where I had to play after Scott Carstairs from Fallujah and Wes Hauk. So it was like I have to headline over these guys who are absolute monsters, and I have 2 weeks to do it.
Yeah.
So, you
No
know,
pressure.
no pressure, yeah. And basically, so I was kind of thrown into that, and I did the tour and I made it through. I don't feel that I played well at all on that one, but
Hmm.
basically the adjustment that I had to make was, okay, I'm home now. Now I got to really learn this music, and that's been what I've worked on for the past almost 3 years, and then writing the new album. Interpersonally, there wasn't really a ton of adjustment because I just know the guys so damn well. Like I think I was at the second Rivers of Nihil show. I uh, I was at the party where they got signed to Metal Blade, or their party
That's
for getting
awesome.
signed to Metal
Yeah.
Blade. Yeah. Um, yeah, just known them for so long. It's
Yeah.
much interpersonal adjustment, and then the lineup changes, they had to happen. So that's the adjustment there was, I think, mostly just musical. How do we execute this music as a four piece now? And a lot of that fell on Biggs's lap. I do a lot more vocals as well, but Biggs had to step into being a front man, and
Yeah.
that's I'm not a front man.
Yeah.
If you let me talk too much on stage, I'm going to say something stupid and piss everybody off eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely takes a certain kind of person for one, and also it's hard to like adjust to. Like it's one thing if you start a band like being a front man and whatnot and you're used
Right.
to that, but if you're like somewhat more in the background and then like have to change to being a front man, and it's definitely a
And
bit
you're a
harder.
you're a bass player, no less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Phew.
Yeah, which is that's like, not very common. I think it's one of
Right.
the or maybe the first band I know where like it's the bass player is like a front man or like the main
There's a lot of
vocalist.
like old school death metal bands that did that,
Got it.
the Side and Morbid Angel, stuff like that. They had bass player frontman, but you know, yeah, Mastodon,
Hmm.
basically, to
Okay.
pardon the pun, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And so if you know of like how the band came up with this name, Rivers of Nile. What can you tell me about that if you know it, or no pressure if
Sure.
there's
Yeah, I
no.
mean, from what I understand, it was John Coons, the original guitar player. Great
Hmm.
guy, love John. He plays in Outer Heaven now. I'm pretty sure he named the band. Why he named the band Rivers of Nile, I couldn't tell you,
Yeah,
but I'm
that's
pretty sure
fine.
that was him. I think it was probably, if I know those guys, it was probably just like that sounds sick.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Just, hey, I mean, that's to some degree that every artist or band name needs that. It's like, how does it sound when you're just
Well, I mean, that's
saying,
what it is. Like a band name is just a label for people to identify you. You know, it's like otherwise,
yeah,
it's yeah. It's oftentimes the best ones aren't really thought of that much. You know, it's just like, there it is. And I think that's probably what Rivers of Nile was. If
yeah,
I know John Coons.
yeah. So just like for you more personally, growing up, what first like got you into music, or like made you think that, I want to start playing in a band, start pursuing music?
Yeah, my parents for sure. I
Hmm.
grew up. My parents don't play instruments, but I grew up in a household full of music, all different kinds too. My dad was very much into classic rock, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Grateful Dead, um, and he was also into like jazz fusion, jazz. I listened to a lot of John McLaughlin growing up, and Alan Holdsworth and stuff like that. My dad listened to King Crimson, Pink Floyd. My mom was
Hmm.
also huge into Pink Floyd. My mom loved Peter Gabriel, loves Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins. Uh, so I grew up in a household that was just full of music all the time. And one day my dad said to me, like, "Do you want a guitar?" I said, "Sure." And it's kind of sat in the attic for maybe 2 years. And then I remembered it was up there, and I just started playing. And I had some friends in my neighborhood that that they would play like Metallica and Slayer songs. And I heard them doing it one day, and I was like, "What the hell is that? I want to do that too." And I knocked on their door and I said, "Will you guys show me how to play?" And they did.
Hmm.
And it turned out that they were actually Colombian gang members, and
Wow.
they eventually got deported. But Diego and Jorge Herrera, if you're out there, taught me a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I was just surrounded by music from an early age.
yeah, that's great. That's great. And then it is always interesting. Like I feel like everyone listens to music, or like hears it growing up, and then I feel like it's just really easy, or like has a common blend into like starting to play music, even if it's not original music, just like learning to play the songs you like, everything like that. So it's great, and I think everyone should at least try it at some point. Uh,
Yeah, I think playing an instrument's pretty rad, and I would probably say that if you're gonna do it, you should maybe not choose heavy metal if you want to make money. But no, that's a joke. But no, it's playing an instrument's great. Uh, it's enriched my life a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you a music artist looking to get your music on Spotify, Apple Music, and basically every platform? Then you should check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a music distribution service. It's what I use to get my music out, and I find it really, really helpful. You can set up all the credits for your songs, put in lyrics and even like times lyrics and things like that, and manage all your releases from one account or one dashboard. It is super helpful, and I don't think I would have gotten started with music as early as I did without DistroKid. So if you're interested in any of their plans, which I'll put on the screen here, and yes, that does say $2 a month for music on all platforms that you need things like that is $2 a month. I know some of you spend more on coffee each day than $2 a month to get music wherever you want. But anyways, back to the point. If you use my link in the description, you will get 7% off of any of these plans to make it even cheaper. Plus, it has so many cool features to help with your music, like pre-save pages, getting it on Instagram and things like that, so people can add your music to posts. It is just super, super helpful, and it's what I've used since starting music. Like I said, use the link in the description, check out DistroKid, and get 7% off of any plan you want. Now, back to the episode. For anyone who's younger like that wants to start playing music or maybe knows how to play and wants to like form a band, what advice would you give to them?
Oh man. Well, I would say probably the best piece of advice that I could give for any band, be it a beginner band or an intermediate level band or whatever, is
Yeah.
just kind of pay attention to what other bands are doing. Like when you play a show, pay attention to what's going on. And a lot of
Mhm.
my first tour was in my old band, Black Crown Initiate. We were opening for our first tour ever was opening for Behemoth, and I remember Goat Whore was on that tour, and we had never toured before, so we didn't know anything about it. And Goat Whore, shout out to Goat Whore, big time, because they kind of just showed us what to do, what not to do. Play your set, get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
Get on stage, get off stage. You're the opener. It's not your show. Realize that. What does that mean? Hurry the hell up and get out of there. And I would say also make sure that you staff your band with people that are competent, not only musically, but interpersonally. That can get along with other people. Um, there's a lot of mentally ill people out there, and you have to kind of weed those out. So yeah, I mean those are two good pieces of advice. And just if you really want to do it, just don't give up. Man, I'm 38
Yeah.
years old, and I look back and I just go, how the hell did I get here? I just never stopped. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And so, which is, I think, great advice because I mean, so much nowadays where you see artists or bands blow up in like, early 20s or something like that. And there's this like feeling of pressure or like time passing by that you get to that age. And if nothing's happened, you're like, oh my God, I'm falling behind all this. But there's no time limit on it or no like age limit,
I
and you can
mean,
just do it whenever.
dude, I didn't start touring until I was 26.
Yeah.
So it's like I put out my first professionally recorded album when I was 25, and
Hmm.
I started touring when I was 26. And I think when I was 26 and started touring, I had maybe played 10 live, well, probably more than that. I probably played 20 to 25 live shows before that.
Hmm.
So my career and story is very different.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up playing live shows really, and I just kind of did my own thing. I also wouldn't recommend that. Play live shows from as
Yeah.
soon as you can. Get this shit out of the way, figure out how to be in front of people, because you don't want your 25th live show to be a sold out show opening for Behemoth.
Yeah.
You want to have
That's
more
that's
experience.
advice I get from so many artists and bands I bring on this show. They're like,
Yeah,
play live, play
it's the
live.
most it's the most important thing. You can sit in your room
Yeah.
and practice all you want, but like, when
There's no
people are
crowd of people in your room.
no, when people are spitting on you and throwing tomatoes at you, you got to figure out how to play well
Yeah.
despite that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess you got into it a little bit there, just bringing up like the interpersonal side of bands, or maybe even with your experience. But similar question, what advice would you give to like people who are kind of coming into a band that's already been established, or like, trying to join something and maybe feel like they're like the odd one out.
Sure. Yeah, you have to figure out where you fit in, right? Like you basically have to um, figure out the musical and interpersonal dynamics of the band and
Hmm.
see where you fit in. So joining Rivers for me, I've been a Rivers fan for a long time, obviously. They're one of my favorite. It's easy to just walk into a situation and go, I'm here. I'm going to take control of it or whatever, but you can't do that. Like I wanted to, and like writing wise, you have a team like Brody and Biggs. So it's like you have to figure out where you fit in that. And it's kind of fortunate for me in that respect because I've always been kind of a collaborative writer. In
Hmm.
my old band, I basically like I would come up with an idea and then I would present it, and my co-writer in that band, Nick Shaw, would develop. We would develop ideas together, and that's kind of what I do now with Brody and Biggs. So
Yeah.
but it took a minute to figure out what that looked like, and I think after the album that we just made, we're all a lot more comfortable doing it. Um, so yeah, you have to figure out where you fit and be respectful of what you're walking into.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. All right. I'm gonna start wrapping things up here because I know you have to go kind of
Sure, sure,
soon,
sure.
but just kind of some quick wrap-up questions. Do you have a Rivers song that is your favorite? Because you mentioned being a fan of them for a while.
Do I get to pick off of the
Yeah,
new album too,
you
or
can
old stuff?
you can pick whatever, new album, anything.
Okay, I think I'll do the last three albums for you. I
Hmm.
think on Where Owls Know My Name, my favorite song is probably Death Is Real. That's a banger, and I love playing
Okay.
it live with them. Um, it's just super super heavy and super sick. Uh, I think on the work. Ooh, I remember the first time I heard the chorus to "The Void from Which No Sound Escapes." I remember I cried because I was like, "That's so goddamn good," uh, and that actually made me feel like that was I think that was the moment where I was like, I gotta join this fucking band because I was like, this is the shit. So I would pick a song from the work, and I think on the new album, that's tough. There's a lot of I'm really proud of the new album, but I think House of Light's real good.
Mhm.
I really I'm really proud of the way that song turned out.
Yeah,
Like I said,
that's
now I
awesome.
have to suffer through singing it every night.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm sure it'll end up being more of a positive than negative,
Oh,
as
100%,
it'll
100%.
yeah.
So I just did one tour. I did my first tour with it. This is how it always goes. I did one tour with it, and you have to start to get comfortable with it. And I definitely, it wasn't the easiest thing I've ever done, but it gets easier every tour. And then
Yeah.
if, a year from now, I'll have some new challenge, and it'll be, House of Light's just whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the way this whole thing works. It's just you got a
Yeah.
challenge, you got to figure it out, and then there's a new challenge,
Yeah, and it
and it
keeps
makes you better.
developing each
Yeah,
album, each tour, everything like
yeah.
that. All right. Well, Andy, thank you so much for coming on. I know you got somewhere to be soon, so I don't want to take up too much more time, but thank you for coming on. If you haven't heard of Rivers of Nile, go listen to some of the songs Andy just mentioned, listen to the singles, get ready for this new album coming, and yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
We're coming to get you.
There
Thanks for
you
having
go.
me.
There you go.
Appreciate
Yeah.
you.